Hello, this is a quick tutorial for VJs and concert visual designers. This information was really useful for me last year when I was designing the visuals for a band's album tour. This video assumes you already know what timecode is and what Resolume is, and you probably know that Resolume can listen to timecode and play back clips in a synchronized way. What you likely don't know, and what I'm about to explain, is how to make Resolume trigger effects and change parameters on almost anything in the UI at certain timecode stamps. Basically, there's a way for free you can create a queue list of effects and other parameter changes that activate at predefined moments in time, which is very useful if the music you're VJing for has a predefined tempo and is the same for every performance. The software I will use is Chataigne. I think this is a French word meaning chestnut. I didn't come up with the name. What matters is that it's free and it works. Resolume, by the way, if you're watching this, I know you can't let a piece of French software do something which you haven't integrated in the program, so if you could, it would be awesome if you integrated this workflow that I'm about to show into a future release. So let's say I want to turn on a red tint effect on this particular clip at timecode stamp 0 hours, 10 minutes, 2 seconds, and 12 frames, and the timecode is 30 frames per second just for this example. By turning on an effect, I really mean turning off the bypass on this effect, given that the effect was bypassed at some point earlier in time. So you would go to shortcuts, and you're probably familiar with Edit MIDI, so the way you can map your MIDI controllers to the file, but this time you need to hit Edit OSC, the abbreviation for Open Sound Control. Now everything should turn a sort of rose color, and you would click on the thing we want to program, which is the bypass button, and here you will see the OSC address of the bypass parameter. Almost everything on the UI, by the way, has an OSC address. In this case, there are two OSC addresses. The address you need depends on the workflow you're going for. If this clip is staying in this position, in column 1, layer 3, then I would choose the first address, which points to the position column 1, layer 3. If you move the clip to a different position, you'll need to use the new address. However, you can avoid keeping track of the clip's position if it moves around by using the second address, which points to any currently selected clip. If the clip is not selected or the selected clip doesn't have a tint effect, then this address won't work. Now let's look at chestnut in French, and here's a blank file. You're going to add a state, add an action. Now look at the conditions for this action. On the validation time, we're going to put the timecode stamp 0 hours, 10 minutes, 2 seconds, and 0.400. Why 400 milliseconds? Because in this example, our timecode is in 30 FPS and our desired timestamp is 12 frames, so 12 divided by 30 is 0.4. If our desired timestamp was 13 frames, well, you have to be careful because you'll need to put 13 divided by 30, which is 0.433333, just enough threes to make sure this software understands that this is a fraction. If you want nice numbers, just use 25 frames per second timecode. So let's recap what we just did. We created a state, which in the context of designing a show with a set list would represent a song, and in this state we have one action, which triggers or becomes true at the timecode stamp we just typed in. When this timecode stamp passes and the action momentarily becomes true, we want an OSC command, think of it like a MIDI command, to be sent to Resolume at the OSC address we determined earlier. To be able to send OSC commands, we have to add a module, protocol OSC. Here we've got some settings. We'll look at that in a moment. Click on the action, go to consequences if true, and add an OSC custom message. And here we go. Paste in the address of our chosen Resolume effect parameter. But hold on, what are we actually sending to this address? We need to add an argument, which can be an integer, float, string, boolean, etc., that is sent to this address. What sort of value do we need to turn off the bypass on the tint effect? Well, look back at Resolume and the selected OSC address, and you'll see an OSC type tag saying integer 0 or 1. These are the only two values that this particular address can receive and understand. In this case, 0 corresponds with the default state any bypass button in Resolume has, which is off, and a value of 1 corresponds with turning the bypass on. If the bypass is already on and it receives a value of 1, it will still be on. The only way to turn it off is to send it a value of 0. So that's the argument we're going to add, an integer value of 0. We're almost set up here. We now need to make sure that Chataigne and Resolume can communicate with each other. More specifically, we need Chataigne to output OSC commands and for Resolume to receive them. Go to Resolume, Preferences, and OSC Settings. You can uncheck OSC output because Resolume doesn't need to send OSC commands to anything, but we do need OSC input checked. Now your IP address may be different. Mine is zeros, presumably because my Wi-Fi on this computer is turned off right now, but I don't think it matters in any case because this is just the default local address available for this machine. Just make note here of the port, which is 7000. Now go to Chataigne and click on the OSC module settings. Here we have OSC input and output. We don't need OSC input on, so we can turn that off. Pay attention to OSC output and check local, unless for some reason you have Chataigne running on another computer and are sending OSC messages wirelessly through the network. Make sure that the remote port is the same as in Resolume. Now we can check that it works by hitting trigger on the action, and here we see the bypass is now off in the tint effect. You can also make another action which sends an OSC value of 1, and clicking both means you're now controlling a Resolume effect with a different software. I bet that opens some doors for somebody watching. The last thing we need to do is set up timecode. In Chataigne, add another module, hardware, sound card, and in hardware settings, select the input, basically wherever your timecode signal is coming from on your computer. In my case, I've just got a virtual cable output and I've got a timecode file which starts at 10 minutes on the dot, and I'm playing it in VLC, and the audio device is my virtual cable input. Also make sure you've got the active input channels checked in Chataigne and output audio disabled. While editing, I realized I forgot to mention that in the sound card settings here, LTC should be turned on and the FPS set correctly. And in the action settings, we need to select sound card, LTC, LTC time as the input value. This is actually where you're supposed to type the timestamp. The validation time should be zeros. My mistake, but perhaps it's one you'll accidentally make too. Now when the timecode file is playing in VLC, I can see that Chataigne recognizes it, and playing the timecode file from the beginning, just 2 seconds later, our effect bypass button is triggered. And voila! We have changed an effect parameter in Resolume using timecode. Remember that this is something you can't do in Resolume natively as of uploading. You can only have video clips synchronized to timecode by selecting in the clip transport settings SMPTE 1 or 2. So in combination with this native feature and with the method I have just shown you, you now have the building blocks for programming an entire timecode-based visual show. Without such a workflow, I wouldn't have been able to do all these cool live camera placements in the visuals for Lovejoy last year. I hope that this video was useful to somebody. Remember that I'm open to doing such work for you if you're a cool musical project and you actually have a budget. I kind of made this video as part of balancing out my seesaw act of being an artist/creative and a technically competent industry professional, whatever the hell bullshit I'm supposed to be to get hired. But I always have a lot to learn, so who knows, maybe 1 year from now this tutorial will be kind of silly and useless, but whatever. Anyways, back to creating. Au revoir, fajne dag, do svidania, bye bye.